She was standing in the driveway when I pulled up, and that was new. For 28 consecutive Tuesdays and Thursdays, Sloane Mercer had been somewhere else when I dropped her son off, at the hospital, running an errand, stuck on the bypass. I'd pull up to the house. Theo would grab his backpack, give me the half nod that 11-year-old boys deploy instead of actual thank yous, and I'd watch him disappear through the front door before backing down the driveway and going home. 28 times. This time she was waiting. She had her hospital badge still clipped to her scrubs, which meant she'd driven straight from a shift. The motion sensor porch light had already clicked on, jumping ahead of the dusk the way those things always do. Her arms weren't crossed. She wasn't performing confrontation, but the way she was standing had a quality to it, grounded and still, like she'd made some kind of decision before we arrived and she was standing in it. She was looking at my car before I'd even stopped rolling. Theo saw her through the windshield and made a small, wordless sound. I put the car in park. She walked toward us, not fast, not slow, and Theo climbed out. She took him in a quick, tight hug, held it longer than he probably expected, said something into his hair. He nodded. She let him go, and he went inside without looking back at me, which was smarter than I gave him credit for. Sloane came to the driver's side window. I lowered it. "I want to understand something," she started. Her voice had the careful neutrality of a person who'd practiced staying calm in advance. "How long has this actually been going on?" "About a month." Something moved across her face. "Theo told me a few times. He was trying to keep things manageable for you." She looked at me for a long moment, the kind of look that starts as one question and turns into a different one partway through. "Why? Why do you keep doing this?" The answer was already out of my mouth before I'd measured it. "Because someone should." The porch light buzzed softly. Down the block, a dog barked at something. Sloane's expression did something complicated and private, and I watched it happen, and I understood right then that those 3 words had landed somewhere they hadn't been invited to go. September is where this story actually starts. My name is Caleb Porter. I'm 33 years old. I teach PE at Westfield High and coach varsity baseball. And in the fall and winter, I run middle school travel ball for a youth athletics organization out of Columbus. I am not a quiet person. I've been described as loud at barbecues and impossible to ignore at games, and both are fair. I clap my hands together when I'm making a point. My players tolerate it. My friends have given up asking me to stop. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment I keep meaning to trade for an actual house. I go to trivia nights on Thursdays, and I coach kids like I mean it because I do. That's who I was when I first noticed Theo sitting alone on the bleachers on a Tuesday evening in late September, and I want to be clear about something. I didn't think anything was beginning. I thought I was just doing what a reasonable person does. Practice ends at 5:30. Travel ball parents are the organized kind, the kind who are early on principle. By 5:40, the field was always empty except for me and the equipment bags. Not that Tuesday. Theo was on the second row of bleachers with his backpack across his lap and his cleats still on his feet, which was unusual. He was the kind of kid who packed efficiently, he'd told me once, with more seriousness than most adults apply to anything, that he didn't like wasting people's time. He was staring at his phone with the fixed concentration of someone waiting for it to do something specific. I sat down beside him. "Your mom on her way?" "Yeah," still looking at the screen. "She's just running late." 5:30 became 6. The sky shifted from orange to the flat purple of an October evening. I had granola bars in my coaching bag, always kept them for kids who came to practice without eating, and I handed him one without making anything of it. He took it the same way. At 6:15, he said, "She's probably stuck at work. She's a nurse. It happens." No bitterness in it, no performance. He was just explaining the facts of his situation with the flatness of someone who has accepted them. This is how things are, and I'm not asking for them to be different. That's the specific voice of a kid who has learned that wanting things to be different doesn't change them. Want a ride? He thought about it with genuine consideration. She might already be on her way. I'll drive slow, almost a smile. Okay. He texted his mom in the car. I saw him typing, but he didn't show me what he wrote. I found out later it said, "At home, grabbed dinner, all good, no mention of me." He'd already developed the skill of carrying information carefully, of protecting the people around him from the things they'd feel guilty about if they knew. His house was 12 minutes from the field. The neighborhood was the kind I grew up in, tidy and working hard. The houses well kept, but the cars a few years old. The front yards maintained, but not landscaped. I recognize the feeling of a place where people are trying, and the trying isn't invisible. He let himself in with a key. "Thanks, Coach Caleb. Next time your mom's running late, just text me." He looked at me from the door. "You sure? I'm standing here, aren't I?" He nodded once, and the door closed. I backed out and drove home. I heated up leftover pasta and went to bed, thinking I'd done the normal thing a reasonable person does. That was the end of it. Then it happened Thursday, and again the following Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that. By the third week, it wasn't an accident anymore. Theo's mom was working late consistently, and Theo had quietly recalibrated his expectations. He'd stopped asking her to try to get there earlier. He waited, he texted, he rode home with me. The fourth week, I put a dedicated bag of granola bars in the glove compartment, for practical reasons. Theo found them when he was looking for a charging cable. He held the bag up and looked at me. "You know I'm not going to starve," he said. "Probably not. Practice is before dinner." Also true. He put the bag back. "Thanks," he added quietly, like he'd decided that was the honest response. I was starting to understand that Theo thought carefully about what the honest response was to things. He asked questions that sounded simple until you tried to answer them. Did I like baseball or just coach it? I told him both, that there was a difference between them and they coexisted. He processed this. Then, my dad played when I was little. He doesn't anymore. He moved to Phoenix. A brief pause, or not quite a pause, more like a breath he'd learned to take. He calls sometimes. He said sometimes the way you say a word you've decided not to feel. I didn't try to fill that space. Some silences are specific. The drives home were 12 minutes by the fastest route. I started taking the longer way without thinking much about it, through the park road instead of the bypass. 4 extra minutes, nothing significant. Theo never asked why. He'd just watch the trees out the window and talk or not talk. And I realized at some point that these were the quietest 12 minutes in my week. Not quiet because nothing was happening. Quiet the way a room gets when 2 people in it have decided they don't need to perform anything for each other. He was 11 years old, and he'd already figured that out. I wasn't sure most adults ever did. He asked about my family a week later. I told him about my parents in Columbus, my sister who was a doctor, the 3 schools I'd coached at before landing at Westfield, where the team finally felt like mine. He listened to all of it the way he listened to everything, fully, with the complete attention that kids have before they learn to half-listen. "Do you have kids?" he asked. "No." "Do you want them?" A beat. "Yeah, probably." "You'd be good at it," he said, and went back to looking out the window. There's a particular feeling when an 11-year-old says something that's accurate and expects nothing back for it. I deflected with a laugh that came out a beat too fast. Theo didn't say anything else. He just sat there with the patience of someone who already knows they're right. The 5th week I finally met her. I walked Theo to the door because the porch light had been out for 2 weeks. I'd replaced the bulb with a spare from my car, a 40-second job. I'd never mentioned it, and the door opened before he could get his key out. Sloane Mercer. She still had her hospital badge clipped to her scrubs, and was holding her car keys the way you hold them when you walked in 30 seconds ago. The exhaustion on her face was the earned, specific kind, the kind ER nurses carry. What I noticed first, before any of that settled into analysis, was that she organized the space she occupied even at the end of a long shift, something in how she stood in the doorframe. Tall, auburn hair coming loose from a low ponytail, strong hands around her keys. She looked at Theo, then at me. Her expression moved through several things quickly before settling into controlled composure. "Mom," Theo said, "this is Coach Caleb. He gives me rides." A short silence of the kind that happens when a question is understood, and the person has to decide how to handle it. "I had no idea," she said. "I texted you every time. You texted me I'm home," gentle but precise. She turned to me. "How long has this been going on?" "About a month." "How many rides?" 8 or 9. She closed her eyes for a beat. Then, "I'm going to pay you for." No, too fast and too firm, and she registered both. "At minimum for gas." "Please don't." She gave me the look of a woman who has had to accept help she didn't want before and found it humiliating, and was not going to do it again without a clear accounting. I understood that look completely. I didn't enjoy being what caused it. "I'll work out another arrangement," she said. "Whatever makes sense for you." She called the school the next afternoon. I came in from the gym to take it in the office. Her voice was different on the phone, stripped of context, already in coordinator mode. She asked if we could talk. I said yes. She came to the school parking lot at 4 while I was waiting by my car with a coffee I'd forgotten was already cold. She'd changed, dark jeans, a burgundy sweater, hair still tied back but looser. She walked toward me with the deliberate pace of someone who'd rehearsed what she was going to say and decided to trust it. I held out the cold coffee reflexively, a complete accident, then caught myself and pulled it back. She'd already seen it. The corner of her mouth moved. "Is Theo in some kind of trouble?" she asked. "No, he's a good kid, thinks about things." "Then I'm confused about what this is." "He was sitting on the bleachers every Tuesday and Thursday after practice," I said. "I couldn't drive past that." A beat. "That's all?" "That's all." She studied me the way people study something they're looking for the hidden cost inside. I held eye contact. "I'm going to work out another pickup," she said. "Okay, but in case there's a gap, can I have your number? Just emergencies." She gave me hers first. That told me something about how she operated. She turned to leave, then half turned back. "He really just sits there, waiting?" "Every time, backpack on his lap." Her shoulders dropped slightly, not dramatically, just a fraction, the way a person's do when something they've been carrying for a long time shifts position. "Okay," she said, and got in her car. 3 days later, Theo handed me a folded permission slip. It was filled out in handwriting so neat it looked printed. The school's standard liability form had gone through administrative channels. I'd been planning to handle it, and Sloan had signed it that morning and sent it back with Theo by afternoon. She could have arranged a different pickup by then. She hadn't. "She signed it," Theo said. "I see that." He looked at the road. "She only stops doing something when she has a clear replacement. She didn't have one." A pause. "So she decided this is acceptable. Or she ran out of time to deal with it." "She doesn't run out of time," he said, with the calm certainty of a lifelong student of a subject. "She reorganizes." November. The permission slip was on file. The arrangement was official. Twice a week I picked Theo up, sometimes with his teammate Danny Okafor in the back seat, talking continuously about everything that had occurred to him since the previous sentence, and I dropped them both off, and it was just the thing that happened on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. What changed in November was Sloan. She started being home when we arrived. Not every time, but enough. She'd be visible in the window, or she'd lift a hand from the porch. One Tuesday she was mid-call on the porch when we pulled up, and she nodded at me across the yard over Theo's head. That was the night she offered coffee. She'd already started walking back inside as she said it. "I just made a pot, if you..." And so the invitation was either for me to follow or let it go. I told myself I followed because I had 40 minutes before I needed to be anywhere. Her kitchen. It was the kitchen of a person who had too many things to track and had built careful systems to track them. A dry erase board above the coffee maker with color-coded days, sticky notes on the refrigerator, the cabinet above the sink, the window frame. Theo's week mapped out. Thursday, permission slip. Friday, exam study guide. Saturday, free. A corkboard near the back door layered with receipts and appointment cards, and 2 small drawings, clearly from years earlier, kept because she'd decided to keep them. She caught me looking. Survival system. Looks like it's working. Most days, she handed me coffee and leaned against the counter. Theo drifted through on his way to the stairs. She touched his hair briefly as he passed. Automatic, years deep, neither of them registering it. And then he was gone, and it was just the 2 of us in her warm kitchen. She asked about coaching. I told her about a kid named Leo, 12, who flinched every time a pitch came in above his waist, and how I'd spent 3 weeks just working on the flinch before we ever got to the hitting. "That's a lot of time for one kid," she said. "He's not even in your school program. He needed it." She turned the mug in her hands. "You just keep finding kids who need things." She said it like someone naming something they'd been looking at from a distance and only now found words for. "Is that what this was with Theo?" she asked. "At the beginning?" "At the beginning, yeah. And now?" The coffee was good, and Theo's drawings were on the corkboard, and the kitchen was warm. "Now I like talking to him," I said. "He thinks. He talks to you more than he talks to me some weeks." She said it directly, looking at her mug, not an accusation, just a fact she'd decided to say out loud. "I know that's not my fault. It still feels like something. It means he's working things out. Kids need more than one person for that." She turned the mug again. "His dad calls less than he lets on. Theo protects me from that. I protect him from how angry I am about it. So we protect each other." A pause. "That's not the healthiest system." "Probably not, but it's what people do." "Yeah," she said, "it is." The coffees ran out and I had somewhere to be, and she walked me to the door and said thanks, with enough warmth that I thought about it on the drive home longer than was reasonable. The Tuesdays continued. The coffees continued, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes 45, always with the orbital presence of Theo nearby, and the particular quality of quiet that comes into rooms when something is being carefully not addressed. Some nights the conversation was almost entirely practical. Work stories, school updates, the ongoing saga of Danny Okafor's various opinions. Other nights there were longer pauses, and neither of us rushed to fill them, and those pauses accumulated into something that felt, week by week, less like the absence of words, and more like a different kind of talking. I noticed the specific way she laughed when something surprised her, a short sound, almost involuntary, that she didn't always let out all the way. I noticed she refilled my coffee before it was empty. I noticed that whenever Theo came downstairs and found us talking, he'd look at us for a second with an expression I couldn't quite read, then go back upstairs without asking for anything. She told me things in installments. Her ex-husband Brendan, gone almost 2 years, more consistent with payments than presents. Her mother's health unsteady down in Dayton, the 4-hour round trip she made every other Sunday. She'd switched from pediatrics to the ER 8 years ago because the pace suited her better, which told me something about what kind of person she was that she probably hadn't meant to reveal. At the end of one conversation, she said, "You don't talk about yourself like you're looking for something. Most people do. There's usually this searching quality, even when they're not. What do I sound like? Like you've already found the things that matter and you're just working on them." I drove home with that sentence in my head for 3 days. December came, and I made a mistake. Theo had mentioned cleats once, the specific brand the travel team used, with the studied offhandedness of a kid who has looked something up many times and decided it's acceptable to want but not to ask for. I'd heard it. 2 weeks later, I found them on sale. I put them in the back seat and handed them to him on a Thursday. His face did something immediate and unguarded, lit up surprise he didn't catch in time to contain. And for 4 seconds, I felt entirely good about it. Then I thought about Sloan. He texted her a photo at dinner. My phone rang at 9:15. Her voice was carefully level. "You can't do that. I need you to understand. He's my son. I'm the one who tracks what he needs. I'm the one who—" She stopped. A few seconds of quiet. Then, "Please just ask me first." "You're completely right," I said. "I'm sorry." The call ended. I sat with the phone in my hand. I'd walked into her territory without thinking, and the intention had been clean, but the action was careless, and for her those two things weren't interchangeable. She was managing everything, every single thing, on her own, and I'd treated that like a space I had standing in, which I didn't. I pulled back, gently, but I did. The next 2 Tuesdays I left right after dropping Theo off. 3rd Tuesday she offered coffee, and I said I couldn't stay. Theo noticed immediately. "You're being weird," he said in the car. "I'm not being weird. You leave before the coffee's ready." She notices. I drove for a block. I made things complicated. I'm giving her space. He was quiet for a while. Then, "She's not mad at you. She's mad at herself for not being able to do everything, the driving, the cleats, everything, and also not need any of it. And those two things keep fighting each other inside her." He turned toward the window. "She gets like that." I looked at the road. "When did you get this observant?" "I've been watching both of you," he said, "for a while now." The Tuesday Theo didn't make the travel team was a gray, committed December day. He found out at practice. The head coach read the list, and Theo's name wasn't on it, and Theo had already guessed from the way the coach looked at him during warm-ups. He didn't cry. He took off his hat, examined it, put it back on. He packed up his gear without being asked. Sloan had called ahead. She might not make it in time. Could I be there when he found out? She'd asked it practically, like a logistics request, the way she protected herself when she was asking for something she needed. "Is it because I missed those Thursdays in October?" Theo asked in the car. "No." "You sure?" "Positive. It's a numbers thing. More kids than spots." He didn't answer for a while. Then, quietly, "I practiced every day." "I know." "Then how?" "Practiced maximizes your chances," I said. "It doesn't guarantee the outcome. And that gap is real, and you're allowed to be angry about it." He didn't say anything for the rest of the drive. I sat with him on the front step of his house because I wasn't going to drop him off and drive away from that. The porch light came on. The cold settled around us. He didn't say much, and I didn't try to fill the silence. It was the right kind of silence. Sloan pulled up 20 minutes later. She read the scene from the driveway. Theo on the step, shoulders low, me beside him, and she didn't rush. She came up the walk and sat on his other side and pulled him in against her, and he leaned into her the way he only let himself do when the version of himself he maintained during the day had dropped its guard. She held him and looked at me over the top of his head. Just a look. "Stay." I stayed. When Theo eventually went inside to heat up dinner, Sloan and I were left on the step. The street was quiet. The neighbors' holiday lights blinked steadily 2 houses over. "Thank you for sitting with him. I wasn't going to leave him out here." "I know you weren't." A pause. "You never are." She turned the next sentence over carefully before she said it. "I've been noticing that. You show up and you give, and I keep waiting for the part where I find out what it costs, where the invoice comes." She looked at her hands. "It hasn't. It won't. That's not how things usually work." "I know. Then what is this?" I thought about what was actually true. When I was 9, I said, I waited at a Little League field for an hour and 40 minutes after practice. My dad got held up at work and forgot to call. People drove past. Nobody stopped. Eventually, one of the other coaches gave me a ride. But by then, I paused. It sounds small. It wasn't. Sloane was very still beside me. I've never been able to drive past a kid sitting somewhere waiting, I said. That's what this started as. And then, I looked at the door Theo had gone through. He thinks about things, and I find myself looking forward to Tuesdays more than I have any particular reason to. A silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable, waited. I like Tuesday evenings too, she said, very quietly. When I hear you pulling out of the driveway. Another pause. More than I have any particular reason to. The porch light buzzed softly. Neither of us moved. So am I, she said, answering something I hadn't put into words. She stood and went inside. I sat on that step a moment longer than I needed to before walking back to my car. I drove home on the park road, the longer way. At a red light, I sat with the engine running and thought about what had just happened on that step. Not what was said, because I knew what was said, but the fact that it had been said at all, that she had said it, that she had looked at me the way she had and meant all of it. I'd been braced for something harder. I'd spent weeks half expecting her to announce she'd found a new arrangement, a different driver, a logical solution that didn't involve me. She was the kind of person who could do that, organize herself clean away from something inconvenient. The fact that she hadn't had been sitting in the back of my mind for a while, and now I had a reason for it, and the reason was simple enough that I felt slightly foolish for not having named it sooner. January. The light was already starting to come back, a few minutes each week, barely perceptible unless you were tracking it. I was tracking it. The Tuesday coffees had resumed. Then dinners started, not elaborate, just the thing that happened when I was there and it got late, and Sloane said stay. The first time she said it plainly, no framing, no incidental excuse. Stay for dinner. Theo talked the entire meal about his history project, his friend Danny's catastrophic approach to dioramas, the technical classification of catapults. After, Theo disappeared upstairs, and Sloane and I stood at the sink, her washing, me drying, the arrangement having arrived naturally without either of us proposing it. Our hands overlapped briefly on the edge of a bowl. Neither of us made it a moment. Neither of us pretended it didn't happen. I've been sleeping better, she said, after a while. Since when? November, maybe. I stopped trying to control things I'm not actually in control of, or I started trying to stop. Those are different things. That's an honest distinction. It's the only kind worth making. She handed me the last glass. When I stopped doing that, I started having more space for the things that are actually good. She wasn't looking at me when she said it. I dried the glass slowly. The dishes were done, and the kitchen was warm, and Theo was upstairs, and there was nothing keeping me there, and I was in no hurry to go. She turned to face me. That direct, complete look. I want to tell you something. Okay. I've been letting Theo work things out with you, things he doesn't bring to me. At first that bothered me. I thought it meant I was failing somewhere. A breath. But I think what you're giving him is something I'm too close to give him right now. And that's, her voice caught slightly at the edge of it. That's not nothing. That's actually, she stopped. Sloane. She looked up. You're not failing, I said. You're doing everything. That's a different thing. I know I'm not failing. Her chin lifted slightly. I'm just tired. I've been tired for a long time, and I haven't let myself say that out loud. You just did. Yeah. A pause. To you, the space between us was small, had been kitchen small for weeks, and it was now either going to stay that size or it wasn't. She stepped forward slightly and kissed me. Brief and real, less like a beginning, then like the recognition of something that had already been beginning for a long time. She pulled back. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay," I said. From upstairs, very clearly. Finally. February. Sloane had enrolled Theo in a winter hitting league that ran Saturday mornings, and I went to the Saturday showcase because he'd mentioned it, and she'd mentioned it, and I'd have been nowhere else. Standing on the sideline beside her in the cold, I watched Theo step to the plate, take his breath, and catch a fastball clean into left field. Sloane made a small fist and said yes under her breath, nearly to herself. I heard it. She caught my expression, and for a moment, maybe 3 seconds, she looked at me with nothing performing in her face. I looked back. Neither of us said anything, because some things are less true when you put words on them. It was cold enough that she had her hands in her coat pockets, and her breath fogged in the air, and she was not a woman given to standing around looking soft, but right then she did. She looked at me like I'd been there the whole time, like this was just the Tuesday of a longer story she'd already started telling herself. One Sunday she made roast chicken, actual roast chicken, with herbs from a small pot on the windowsill that I'd never noticed before. Theo set the table with more precision than any kid his age sets a table, because she'd asked him to do it right, and he did everything right. We ate and talked, and Theo explained every structural failure in Danny Okafor's approach to base running. She listened and asked exactly the right questions. I watched her do it and thought, this is what it looks like when someone is actually paying attention. After dinner, dishes again. Theo had gone upstairs. "I don't do this," she said, with her back to me. "What?" She turned. "Invite people to things." I stopped a while back. It felt like too much exposure, like if someone said no, it would mean something I wasn't ready for. She looked at me steadily. "I asked you. You came. I want you to know that mattered." I set down the dish towel. I would have driven 4 hours to be here. The kitchen went quiet. She put down what she was holding and stepped forward. The space between us was the same small space it had always been, except this time it was a choice. "I've been hard on everything for a long time," she said. "People, situations, I make them earn it. It's exhausting, actually." A beat, and you just keep showing up. I know. That's very inconvenient for my system. I know that too. Almost a smile. Almost. "I've been waiting for you to get tired." I won't. The almost smile became something else. "I love Tuesdays," she said quietly. "So do I," said.